What is up, guys? Well, I am still in Austin, Texas, attending actually the last day of Fantastic Fest today, but yesterday we were able to break away for a little bit and check out the new Demi Moore body horror film called The Substance. Now, I don't know if there has been a movie released in the calendar year of 2024 that you guys have been more anxious for me to check out. I mean, I've been covering a very exciting festival. I've been talking about movie premieres. I've talked about Terrifier 3 and Heretic, movies that aren't going to be out for weeks. And the most popular comment that I've gotten over the last week plus has been like, yeah, cool, but what about The Substance? And that alone got me so hyped. Like, what happens in this movie that everybody is so anxious to hear my thoughts, that even exciting things that I know horror fans were hyped about is like secondary now. So we checked this thing out yesterday before the festival kicked off for day 7, and wow. I get it. I get why you guys were like, yeah, cool. Talk about The Substance, bitch. We don't care about that other stuff. And basically what The Substance is you have Demi Moore, who is this aged actress who is starting to feel like she is losing her beauty because she's getting older, and she uses this experimental drug that replicates cells and creates this younger, better version of herself that basically spawns out of her body. And every 7 days they have to switch. Their consciousness switches from the younger self to the older self of Demi Moore. And things get fucking nuts from there. So starting off with the positives, look, this is without a doubt, by a landslide, by a country fucking mile, the most insane entry of body horror that we have had in the horror genre, maybe since Cronenberg was running shit. I mean, this thing absolutely was nuts for all of the effects and the different deconstruction and degeneration of the human body that we get, that just continues to get worse and worse and worse all throughout this movie. Even some of the more just, not necessarily monstrous side of things, where Demi Moore's back literally just opens up so that the new self can come out of it. I mean, the visuals, the gore, the makeup effects, the creature effects that we get in here, next fucking level. I mean, me being borderline harassed for a week to check this out, and me using the verbiage that I am using here, is still underselling how batshit this movie is. It was to the point where multiple times throughout the movie, something would happen, and me and Uncle Sean both had the same thought, where you see a visual and you're like, okay, that right there is the scene. That's the one that everybody's talking about, that's getting everybody hyped. Like, that's as nasty as it gets right there. That's it. That's the finale. No. 10 minutes later, something 10 times worse comes along. And then 10 minutes after that, something 50 times worse comes along. I mean, it's a movie that continues to top itself, to push things further, to push the effects further, to push how nauseating things get and how grotesque things get even further. And man, what a wild experience. It is not often that you have a film that feels like it goes for the throat within the first act, and yet continues to find ways to completely top itself as the movie goes on. And if I haven't made it clear by saying all of that, the practical effects work is outstanding in this film. I'm sure there was some digital effects here and there that were used to kind of aid a lot of that physical stuff, but everything that was meant to be plastic, rubber, latex, corn syrup, everything that was meant to look tangible and real, it looked real in the most disgusting way possible, which is what you must have to have effective body horror. And let me tell you, Demi Moore is one of those icons of Hollywood that has absolutely nothing to prove. And it is so impressive, refreshing, and exciting to see an actor like her, with the status that she has, bona fide legend, do something as raw and as risky and as bold as what she does in this film. Like, somebody who has nothing to prove and yet takes a role like this to remind everybody, I'm a fucking icon, bitch. So get ready to see next level shit from me. That was so exciting. Like, she's an actress I have always liked. She was, of course, super popular in the 80s, had a ton of hits in the 90s, and I haven't really seen too much from her in the last decade or so. And so this was a massive surprise that feels like one of the most challenging, one of the most bold things that she's ever done in her career. And I hope that she continues to get like a rejuvenation in her career, if that's what she wants to do after this film. Like, I'm not bullshitting when I say what she brings here is one of those roles that we're going to be bitching about in a few few months saying, Oscars, why are you ignoring this woman? Why are you ignoring this performance? Because she deserves to be in that conversation. She deserves to be on that stage. Like, she is so fucking good with what she brings to this movie. And I feel like it was a very personal thing for her because, of course, she was a major sex symbol in the 80s and then again in the 90s. And I'm sure a lot of the themes that we're exploring here about aging Hollywood actors and how the industry treats them and these unattainable beauty standards and how they literally like downgrade you to the max that you can be because of how old you are or how long you've been in the system. I'm sure she has a lot of passionate views about that she was like just kind of frustratingly expressing through this character and through this story, and it comes through on screen. So she was absolutely incredible. Like, I didn't know what to expect from this film, but this is like one of the craziest things I've seen an actor do in the later stage of their career to just absolutely grab audiences again and say, no, you ain't forgetting about me. I'm here to stay. And the movie's not exactly subtle with its exploration of that theme, with the way that Hollywood treats actresses more specifically, but certainly anybody that is in the middle age stage of their life. And I just felt like they did it in a way that was blunt. It was not subtle, but it was very clever and entertaining with how that they expressed it, with not only the way that the story's unfolding, but with some of the visuals, with how everything wraps up in the third act and some of the dialogue that comes with that. And I think it's one of those subjects that you don't necessarily have to play coy with. You don't have to be ultra careful and clever about how you like subtly weave it into the story. You can be bold-faced with it and have it right there in the forefront like they do in this film, because it is something that is a major conversation that needs to be had about why we treat people differently, or why the industry more specifically treats people differently because they're older. Like, somebody that's delivered so much to Hollywood and so much to the entertainment industry is suddenly just discarded because there's somebody who's newer and younger out there. And I think they hammer that point home even more just by casting somebody like Demi Moore. Like, who the hell looks at Demi Moore and says, yeah, she doesn't look as good as she used to? Like, in this movie, I'm looking at her like, this is a goddess. Like, this is one of the most gorgeous human beings that have ever walked the face of the earth. And yet you are watching her portray this character that is so crippled by how she looks at herself in a downward way, as if she is not measuring up anymore, as if she is somehow flawed or she is somehow monstrous by aging beautifully, that she goes through what she goes through in this film. Like, for all the body horror stuff, one of the most effective scenes of this movie is just where she calls this person that she comes across from high school, who's kind of a nerdy guy, but he looks at her as literally the most gorgeous human being that has ever walked the earth. And so she wants to kind of connect with somebody that treats her that way. And she's so insecure about her own looks that she spends like an hour going back and forth to the mirror in the bathroom and changing her outfit, changing her makeup, covering up pieces of her body that she's insecure about. And that whole segment right there is basically the story in a nutshell. And so just a really good thing to explore in a movie like this in the most grotesque way possible to make their point. Also got to give it up to Margaret Qualley. She's the one who plays the younger version of Demi Moore, and she does a fantastic job as well. I don't think there's as much on her shoulders as far as bringing out that theme of the story and kind of having more of the personal tie to the story, but for being the younger, more desired version of this character and having that life kind of intoxicate her and make her want more and make her start to do things that are against the rules, if you will. You'll understand that more when you see the film. She does a really great job at bringing that forward. I mean, she's gorgeous as well, so it absolutely fits the theme of the movie, but the way that she is the young, hip star that starts to not care about anybody but herself, juxtaposed with the Demi Moore side of things that is getting the raw end of that deal, those two working together to play different versions of the same character was just perfection. One of the biggest surprises of this movie, Dennis Quaid, man, he was hilarious in this. I have not seen him do a role like this ever. He's always been an actor that I've enjoyed. I've always thought he was really good, but this is one of the more like darkly comedic spins and over the top, almost cartoonish things that I've ever seen him do. He's playing one of the major producers or the showrunners, the guy that is making all of the decisions about Demi Moore not being good enough and this new version being, you know, the new it girl. And he is just so cartoonish and over the top and jovial and just absolute scene chewing with what he is doing that I found him to be hilarious. Every time he entered the screen, I just smiled waiting for what ridiculous shit he was about to say and do. And again, another way to very unsubtly put a spotlight on how a lot of these people likely are in the Hollywood system. With the way that his character is just such a scumbag, and it is elevated to this absolute cartoonish level with how jovial he is about what a piece of shit he is, it hammers the point home. Again, this is a movie that is so on the nose about what it is saying, but you love it for it. Like, you love the fact that they're not pulling any punches. They're not leaving any room for misinterpretation of what they're trying to say. They are just hitting you over the head with it in the most entertaining way possible. And as far as the director Coralie here, I would butcher her last name, so I'm not even going to try it. She did a film called Revenge from maybe like 4 years ago that, for somebody who doesn't really care for the sexual assault revenge subgenre in horror, that was certainly one of the better ones that I have seen. And towards the third act especially, gets pretty gnarly with its gore. And her delivering what she did with Revenge and then carrying it over to what she delivers with The Substance, I think this woman has now firmly planted her flag as a voice to watch out for in this genre. Now, I don't know if she's going to stick with horror. For some reason, it tends to be the case that a woman director that gets their start in horror always tends to branch off and start doing other things. As you guys saw, I had difficulty when I was ranking horror directors for that exact reason. But even if she never delivers another horror film again, she has delivered something that's going to be in the conversation for the rest of history. Like, as long as body horror is the subject at hand, you're going to hear about David Cronenberg, and then you're going to hear about The Substance, and that's just a monumental achievement. The way that she is able to have such gnarly visuals and have such this visceral style to her, while now 2 movies in a row kind of focusing on somewhat of a feminist message without it feeling like agenda driven or feeling like it's overbearing to the point where it's only going to appeal to a very niche audience. She's so good at crafting stories that really are for everyone while being about a very specific group or a very specific injustice out there. And that's a very hard line to toe nowadays. I mean, if I even just started to describe some of the themes of this movie, there's a number of people that are going to pull back because they've seen movies like this that do that way worse than she does with The Substance. So she is a filmmaker, a storyteller that with this second film, I think is just absolutely going to make her name for herself. And she's somebody that we're going to be looking out for, much like we do with things like Ari Aster or Jordan Peele, where you see her name and instantly everybody in the horror fandom is going to pay attention. And the last thing that I will say in the positives for this film is that this is a 2 hour and 20-minute film that never drags. I never felt the runtime. I never felt like we are lingering too long on a certain chapter of this story. I never felt like it was about to end and then they just kept going. Like a lot of these common issues that I tend to have with films that are approaching that 2.5 hour, 3 hour runtime, I thought The Substance utilized its runtime very well, and it merited a runtime of that length because of how wild and batshit things are going to get. Like, there was a point where it felt like we're approaching the end, and then it was almost like a pleasant surprise that they had something even more fucked up planned that we're going to explore for another 20 minutes. So as far as a 2 hour and 20-minute body horror film, which sounds like it might be a tad much or a tad exhausting, I thought it was perfect. And now moving on to the negatives, and I'll be honest guys, this is the second film in less than a week, which is a rarity for me, that I am really struggling to think of anything that I would change, alter, or take out of this movie. Like, I think for what they were going for, they did damn near a perfect job here. Probably a perfect job. The only thing that I can say in the negative column is that this is a film, because of the nature of what it's doing, because of how grotesque and disgusting it is, because of the type of experience it is delivering, it's probably not a film that I would rewatch all that often. You know, this is not going to make it into the constant fold of films that I watch every year, every other year. I'll probably revisit this one, I don't know, every 4 or 5 years. It's not going to be an instant favorite that I'm consistently just re-experiencing. So I do play that into my scores, so it felt like it's fair to bring that up here. It's just the type of film that I watched once, had a blast with it. Can't wait to talk with everybody else about this as they see it. Certainly going to recommend it to a few people and fuck them up for the weekend. But yeah, I don't know if I will grab this one off the shelf very often. And that's really all I can say negative about it, which isn't saying a whole lot. Overall, guys, if you love body horror and you have been waiting for somebody to come along and deliver something as impactful as a number of the films that Cronenberg gave us in the 80s, this is the one. This is the one that is going to stick in your mind, that is going to just haunt you with the insane designs that they have going on here and with how much they do to the human body. And if nothing else, I love this for the fact that it is just an awesome thing to see Demi Moore do at this stage in her career, and I hope that she gets the attention and the praise that she deserves for this role and for this performance, because it's arguably the best thing I've ever seen her do, and that's not hyperbole, that's just fact. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my 2024 new release reviews. I'm also going to put a playlist up here of all of the films I've covered at Fantastic Fest over the last week and a half. Please like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future, and as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.